County and beyond. Welcome back to our final episode of Invasive Species Friday, Season 1. Through this short weekly podcast, we at the Yates hope to bring you information about the invasive species you may see around this county. We're tangled in the field with this week's invasive, swallowwort. In North America, there are two types of swallowwort that are considered invasive. Pale or European swallowwort is native to Ukraine and eastern parts of Russia. It was introduced as a cultivated plant in Monroe and Nassau counties in New York around 1897. Black swallowwort is originally from Europe near the Mediterranean Sea. It was cultivated in greenhouses in Essex County, Massachusetts in the mid-1800s. Its escape was recorded by a collector in 1864 who described it escaping from the botanical garden where it is a weed and promising to become naturalized. Both plants have now spread through the Northeast and across the northern Midwest. Black swallowwort has even made it into parts of California. In New York, they are prolific in many counties, especially those along Lake Ontario, the Finger Lakes, and the Hudson River. Swallowwort is an herbaceous perennial vine whose twinning stems can reach up to 6 feet long. They can be found in mixed hardwood forests and heavily shaded woods, but are also prevalent in sunny, disturbed areas like open fields and along roadsides with either moist or dry soil. Both species have opposite oval leaves with pointed tips. Black swallowwort's leaves are a darker green than the pale swallowwort, but the two are very difficult to tell apart unless they're flowering. While both have self-pollinating, star-shaped flowers that grow in clusters in early summer, the pale swallowwort's flowers are pale pink to maroon in color. Black swallowwort's flowers are dark purple to black, hence the name, and the flower petals have hairs that give them a velvety look. Cousins of the common milkweed, the flowers of both plants give way in late summer to slender pods that grow up to 3 inches long and are full of seeds attached to white fluff. This dispersal system allows them to be carried by the wind for a few meters to a few kilometers. Each square meter of plant can produce, on average, 2,000 seeds. Many of the seeds, especially from the pale swallowwort, are polyembryonic, meaning one seed can produce multiple seedlings. Black and pale swallowworts are moderately aggressive, growing slowly and not reproducing for the first several years. Once they mature, however, they can spread rapidly and tend to overgrow native plants. They often disrupt natural succession, leading to an overall decrease in wildlife, insect, and vegetation diversity. Swallowwort infestations can cover several acres of land, and the vines often tangle up the area, creating an impenetrable thicket. This makes managing these areas much more challenging. The plants are particularly problematic in tree plantations and corn and soybean fields. There is also evidence that in especially dense infestations, swallowwort can reduce the effectiveness of electric fences around cattle pastures. It's typically passed over by deer and other herbivores due to its toxic properties. It's also toxic to insect larvae, and because swallowwort is in the same family as the common milkweed, it sometimes is used by egg-laying monarch butterflies. Though monarchs feed on other milkweed species, most caterpillars do not survive on swallowworts. This, coupled with the invasive's capacity to displace native milkweeds, has added to the concerns for the monarch's future. When trying to tackle a swallowwort infestation, it's important to prioritize populations in full sun as those plants have the highest seed production. For small patches, the plants can be dug up as long as the entire root crown is removed to prevent resprouting. Cutting or mowing the plant is a temporary measure. It can reduce seed production if done before the pods mature, but it also stimulates resprouting from the root crown. If the time and manpower is available, removing pods that form after cutting or chemical treatments will reduce the number of seeds dispersed in the area. Herbicides are available as foliar sprays, but it will take several years of applications to eliminate a dense infestation. It may be more effective when combined with mechanical controls, however, depending on the timing. Root crowns and seed pods should be disposed of by either burning or bagging. Finally, in 2017, a moth was approved for release in the US as the only biological control agent for swallowworts. The larva of the moth, which is native to Ukraine, feeds exclusively on the leaves of both pale and black swallowwort. There have been some releases of the moth in New York State, and research is being conducted to improve the establishment of the insect. And with that, we reach the end of this week's episode of Invasive Species Friday. This is also the end of Season 1 for this podcast. We want to thank our colleagues, supervisor, and board members of the Yates County CCE for their constant encouragement and support over the last 4 months. We also want to thank our listeners not only for their support, but for their continued interest in learning about invasive species and what they can do to help minimize the spread. We have some invasive species projects in the works coming up in the new year that we would love your help with, so stay tuned for updates. Along those lines, we want to remind you one more time that if you see an invasive on your adventures, please report it to IMAP Invasives. Next year, we'll be back with another bunch of things to look out for in Season 2 of Invasive Species Friday. Until then, we at the Yates CCE thank you for tuning in and supporting our fight against invasive species in Yates County.